First of all, I want to thank everyone for your attendance to our panel discussion. My name is Ken Clark, and I'm going to be your moderator for the evening. And I am the current VP of Membership for the Central Ohio chapter.
Dave Davis, I live in the North Pole. In the other 11 months of the year, I'm a program manager for AT&T.
My name is Tim Bulwer. I'm the immediate past president of the PMI chapter. I've been the president of the local Central Ohio chapter now twice.
Actually, I'm Brian Watson. I'm director of training and development now at Quick Solutions. So I see a few former students out in the crowd who have suffered through my PMP classes or CBAP classes.
The focus of our discussion today is going to be around, lessons learned. What types of things have you been able to identify as best practices? How did you apply them? And going forward, what do you think we as IT professionals can do to better plan and execute our projects?
You hear coaches a lot of times, they talk about the fundamentals. We got to get back to the fundamentals, or, the good teams, they're fundamentally strong. And I think we forget that quite a bit. Usually the first two questions I ask is, where's your communication plan and where's your roles and responsibility matrix?
Communications is very important, especially up front with your sponsors.
I would have to say best practices and things I've encountered can't be found in a book. I'd say it's almost the atmosphere of the team that I've been a part of.
I'd like to hear about lessons learned that aren't learned.
Unrealistic schedules.
The problem with lessons learned is you rarely get to work with the same people the second time around to really apply the lessons learned. These organizations, they form for the life of a project, disband, and then who may have been a consultant for your first project around is gone the second time. Management in general does take a bury a head in the sand attitude towards lots of things. There is a lot of reluctance to invest, if I use that term rightly, in people, processes, and things. It's make it faster, make it better.
It's okay to start implementing small incremental changes, very much that Kaizen theory, and eventually over time, you're going to have pretty widespread change.
A lot of the people that are on our teams are 20, 30 something. We need to understand as older individuals that their motivations and what drives them and what's important to them and so on is so much different now than it was 20 years ago.
So then are you then saying that the movement should be towards more project teams that are more familiar with each other to be more productive, so you can in fact share those lessons learned and be more productive like agile teams are experiencing?
Where you're really dealing with unique deliverables, I think you're dealing not necessarily with lessons learned, but with the talent and the creativity and being able to foster that.
I think if you have a team that is working together for a long time and that gets to know each other, the pluses and minuses and so on. The reason a lot of IT projects are inefficient and so on is because you spend half of the time getting to know the strengths and weaknesses of people that are just coming in and going out of your projects.
I've often joked that I am be prepared to die the day I find a developer that picks up somebody else's code and doesn't say I could write it better. That's an issue too. It's an art. I mean, coding is an art.
Having worked in an agile environment for 5 years, I can tell you teams that stay together are eminently more productive 18 months down the road than they were in month one.
One of the things that has worked for me, and this is probably one of the most valuable things that has worked for me, is setting expectations first.
I tend to ask different people in the project team as we're going through stuff the same question to everyone in the team. When I tried that the first time years ago, they're like, well, this person doesn't trust what I'm saying because he's asking the same question to someone else. And so now what I've learned is to set that expectation up front that I'm going to ask similar questions to the same people because you all come about it different ways, and that way I'll get the true sense of what's the best of all of your opinions. by asking it to multiple people.
I think the biggest one for me is the ability to say no. And I think it's very difficult, and a lot of project managers forget. Saying no is an option, both to your stakeholders, to external forces, and internally to your team.
One thing that I have seen as a best practice, when I have my project kickoff meeting, I do have a document called How I Govern a Project that I send out to folks that tells them, if you get an issue, this is what you should do, kind of a little bit, this is how I approach things. I track using this tool, et cetera, et cetera. So
I have a simple message when it comes to projects. Sometimes a project is announced with a solution rather than requirements. And my advice is, don't be afraid to go back to grassroots, find out what the real requirements are. Don't just believe what the solution is that you've been given, because very often you'll find that the requirements can lead you to a better solution.
I think one of the arts, again, of a project or a program manager is being able to analyze the current situation and know what tool to use or how to keep it simple, those other things, in order to move forward.
I think the biggest part is there needs to be a delicate balance between planning and then execution. Making sure you've driven out all of the needed requirements, not so much the wants, but what's truly needed by the sponsor or by the stakeholders.
The biggest flaw I always see from especially Microsoft Project and some of them tools in any project plan in general is they create it, but they don't make it a living document.
There is such a concept called good enough. And I think too many times we get into these planning, we try to be perfect or we try to go the extra mile. There is a time where good enough is good enough and you can just move forward.
Hi, I'm Carol Fleming. One of the biggest best practices that I have is tracking your assumptions and documenting them. Having them on something that you can discuss with your key stakeholders.
How do you find that your core project management fundamentals shine through when your environment is constantly changing and the demands are changing?
To always keep a level head and remain calm and exude an air of confidence. Change happens. There's nothing you can do to stop change. There's nothing you can do to prevent change. The only thing you can do is how are you going to handle it? You can run around like your hair's on fire and freak out every time something happens, or you can calmly evaluate the situation, go back to the analysis piece, break it down into manageable components and overcome it and go on.
One of the things that you have to make sure that you don't lose touch of or lose touch with is you have to still make sure that you're able to identify the what, okay? And make sure that you're still being able to meet those requirements and make sure that you're still being able to make your customers happy.
And one of the biggest ones that faces us as project managers, most organizations I walk into, more than 50% of the development staff is working on keeping the lights on and keeping the infrastructure up and running day to day. And that's a statistic they don't report in their project timing everywhere.
I want to thank the audience for all of your participation and your contributions actually to the discussion as well. And I also want to thank the panelists, Dave Davis, Tim Bulwer, Brian Watson, and myself, Ken Clark. So again, thank you.